Hello and welcome to another episode of English Plus Podcast. I'm your host Danny, and today we're diving into a topic that's not just a matter of social justice, but a cornerstone for building fair and progressive societies: gender inequality and women's rights. Let's start by picturing a typical workplace. You've got men and women, right? But have you ever noticed how certain roles are often gender stereotyped? Think about it. Often, leadership positions are dominated by men, while roles perceived as more nurturing or supportive are filled by women. This isn't just a coincidence. It's a reflection of deeply ingrained societal norms that have been shaping our perceptions and opportunities for centuries. Now let's talk about numbers, because who doesn't love a good statistic? Did you know that globally, women earn approximately 77 cents for every dollar earned by men for work of equal value? This wage gap is not just a number. It's a symbol of the persistent undervaluing of women's work and the barriers they face in climbing the career ladder. But it's not all about the workplace. Gender inequality permeates every aspect of life, from education to healthcare, politics, and beyond. Women are underrepresented in decision-making roles. In many parts of the world, they have less access to education and are more likely to be affected by poverty. And let's not forget the glaring issue of violence against women, a horrifying reality that continues to plague societies worldwide. Now let me share a story that really puts this into perspective. Imagine a young girl. Let's call her Maya. Maya dreams of becoming a scientist, but she lives in a community where girls are often married off young and aren't encouraged to pursue higher education. Despite the odds, Maya is determined. She studies by candlelight, fights for her right to attend school, and eventually, against all odds, earns a scholarship to a prestigious university. Maya's story isn't just inspiring. It's a testament to the resilience and strength of women who fight every day against the tides of inequality. But why should we care about gender equality? Well, besides the obvious moral and ethical reasons, gender equality is good for everyone. It leads to more stable economies, healthier communities, and overall, a more just world. When women thrive, societies thrive. So, what can we do about it? First off, we need to educate ourselves and those around us. Challenge stereotypes and biases, whether they're in the media, in our workplaces, or in our homes. Support policies and initiatives that promote gender equality, whether it's equal pay, parental leave, or education for girls. And let's not forget the power of our voices. Speak up against injustice. Advocate for change, and be an ally to the women around you. But it's not just about the big gestures. Small, everyday actions can make a huge difference. Maybe it's standing up for a colleague at work, encouraging a young girl in your life to pursue her dreams, or simply questioning your own biases and assumptions. As we wrap up, I want you to think about how you can contribute to this fight for equality. Maybe it's starting a conversation, volunteering for a local organization, or even just educating yourself further on these issues. Remember, change starts with us. And speaking of change, don't go anywhere because we're about to dive into our next segment, Word Power, where we'll break down some of the key terms related to gender inequality and women's rights. Understanding these concepts is crucial in advocating for change. So stick around and I'll be right back to empower you with some word power. In the world of language and communication, words are more than just symbols. They are the building blocks of understanding complex concepts like gender inequality and women's rights. As we delve into these topics, certain keywords and phrases emerge as vital to our discussion. Let's start with gender inequality itself, a term that encapsulates the unequal treatment and perceptions of individuals based on their gender. This phenomenon is deeply rooted in societal norms and manifests in various aspects of life, from career opportunities to social privileges. Understanding gender inequality is crucial in recognizing the systemic barriers that different genders, particularly women, face. Another pivotal term is women's rights. This phrase refers to the fundamental human rights that women are entitled to, including the right to live free from violence, to vote, to work, and to own property. Women's rights are an integral part of human rights and highlight the specific challenges women face due to their gender. And when we talk about social justice, we're referring to the concept of fair and just relations between the individual and society. It is measured by the distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges within a society and is closely tied to gender equality. Now consider the wage gap. It represents the difference in earning between different genders, typically between men and women. This gap is a stark indicator of gender inequality, often reflecting discrimination and different societal values placed on the work typically done by women. And what about stereotypes? Stereotypes play a significant role in perpetuating gender inequality. These are oversimplified generalizations about groups of people that often lead to misjudgments and unfair treatment, particularly of women and girls in various roles and capacities. And let's not forget the term empowerment. In the context of gender equality, empowerment refers to increasing the political, social, educational, gender, or economic strength of individuals and communities. It's about equipping and allowing individuals, particularly women, to make life-determining decisions through the different structures in society. The concept of advocacy is also crucial. It involves supporting a cause or proposal to promote change. In the context of women's rights, advocacy is about actively supporting efforts to improve equality and rights for women. And there's also another interesting metaphor: the glass ceiling. The glass ceiling is a metaphor for the invisible barrier that prevents women and minorities from rising to the upper rungs of the corporate ladder, regardless of their qualifications or achievements. And there's also allyship. Allyship is another important term. It refers to the practice of emphasizing social justice, inclusion, and human rights by members of an in-group to advance the interests of an oppressed or marginalized outgroup. Allyship is about using one's privilege to support others who are less privileged. And lastly, we have resilience, often showcased in narratives of women like Maya from our podcast. And it is the ability to recover quickly from difficulties. It's a testament to the strength and perseverance individuals display in the face of adversity, particularly relevant in the context of overcoming gender-based challenges. Understanding these terms is more than an exercise in vocabulary building. It's about gaining the tools to discuss, analyze, and ultimately contribute to the solution of gender inequality. And that's about our word power segment for this episode, but we're not done. Next up, we're not just going to leave you with words and concepts. In our segment, Action Time, we'll explore the action points or real-life applications of these topics. We'll discuss how we can take these concepts from understanding to action, making a real difference in the world around us. Stay tuned, because this is where learning transforms into doing. Welcome back to English Plus Podcast, where we're not just about talking the talk, but also walking the walk. In this segment titled Action Time, we delve into the real-life applications of the concepts discussed earlier. It's all about making gender inequality and women's rights more than just topics of conversation, but catalysts for action in our everyday lives. Let's start with the workplace, an arena where many of us spend a significant part of our lives. Addressing the wage gap isn't just a corporate responsibility. It's something each of us can contribute to. If you're in a position of hiring or setting salaries, it's essential to assess pay scales to ensure they are equitable, irrespective of gender. For the rest of us, Being aware of these disparities and advocating for fair pay is a step towards making a difference. Encourage open discussions about salary ranges in your workplace to promote transparency and fairness. Stereotypes. Oh, those pesky little boxes society loves to put us in. Challenging these requires a conscious effort. Let's say you're a parent, teacher, or anyone who interacts with children. Encourage boys and girls equally to explore all their interests, whether it's in sports, arts, science, or any other field. Break the narrative that certain roles or activities are gender-specific. This simple act can have a profound impact on the next generation's perception of gender roles. And now think about empowerment in your community. This could be as simple as supporting a local women-run business or participating in community initiatives that aim to uplift women. Even sharing stories of successful women in various fields, especially in male-dominated industries, can inspire and empower others. And let's talk about advocacy. Advocacy takes many forms. You can join or support organizations that work for women's rights. Participate in community discussions or public forums where these issues are debated. Use social media platforms not just for sharing personal moments, but also for raising awareness about these critical issues. In terms of breaking the glass ceiling, mentorship is a powerful tool. If you're in a leadership position, consider mentoring a woman in your organization. Provide guidance, share experiences, and offer support in navigating the professional challenges unique to women. And let's talk about being an ally. Being an ally is about understanding and using your privilege to support and uplift others. This can be as simple as listening to the experiences of women around you without judgment, standing up against sexist remarks or jokes, or educating others about the importance of gender equality. And lastly, fostering resilience is key. This can involve supporting those who are facing gender-based challenges, offering a listening ear, or connecting them with resources that can help. Resilience is also about celebrating the small victories in the fight for gender equality, as each step forward is a stride towards a more equitable society. In essence, real-life applications of these concepts means integrating them in our daily actions, conversations, and decisions. It's about making a conscious effort to be part of the solution in our own unique ways. As we close this segment, remember that every small action counts in the journey towards gender equality. Up next, we have our frequently asked questions segment, where we'll address some common queries about gender inequality and women's rights. This is your chance to deepen your understanding and clarify any doubts. So, stay tuned. Welcome to our frequently asked questions segment here at English Plus Podcast. You've journeyed with us through the intricacies of gender inequality and women's rights. And now it's time to address those lingering questions that might still be buzzing in your mind. One common question is, how does gender inequality affect men? Well, it's a crucial point to consider. Well, gender inequality doesn't just disadvantage women. It also imposes rigid norms on men. For example, societal expectations often pressure men to conform to certain roles, limiting their emotional expression and life choices. This can lead to harmful mental health outcomes and perpetuate a cycle of inequality. Then there's the question, why is gender inequality still a problem in developed countries? This is particularly perplexing for many. Despite advancements in education and economic development, gender inequality persists due to deep-seated cultural norms and institutional biases. Even in the most developed nations, issues like unequal pay, underrepresentation in leadership roles, and societal expectations about gender roles continue to exist, unfortunately, but they're still there. Another intriguing query is, how can education help reduce gender inequality? Well, education is definitely a powerful tool. It not only empowers individuals with knowledge and skills, but also challenges stereotypes and changes perceptions. When education systems include gender studies and promote equality, they lay the groundwork for a more equitable society. And people often ask, what role does media play in gender inequality? Well, media is a double-edged sword. It can perpetuate stereotypes through biased representations or challenge them by highlighting diverse and empowering stories. The portrayal of women and men in movies, TV shows, and news can significantly influence public perception and societal norms. And unfortunately, I can't say that media is helping a lot in this sense. Not yet, at least, and of course not everybody, but in general, that's what you get. Let's move to another question. A pertinent question is, can gender inequality impact economic growth? Well, the answer to that is absolutely. Gender inequality can hinder economic development. When half of the population is limited in their educational and professional opportunities, it results in a loss of potential human capital, which is essential for economic growth and innovation. And for all men who are listening to me, I'm not taking anything from you. I'm just saying that you're not alone in this fight. You only represent half of the equation. Let's move on to another question. What is the significance of legal reforms in addressing gender inequality? Well, that's another critical question. Legal reforms play a pivotal role. By changing laws and policies, countries can institutionalize gender equality, protect women's rights, and ensure fair treatment. For instance, laws mandating equal pay or criminalizing domestic violence are crucial steps towards equality. And many wonder, how can men participate in promoting gender equality? Well, men's participation is vital. It involves challenging traditional notions of masculinity, advocating for equitable policies, and supporting women in both professional and personal spheres. By being allies, men can help create a more balanced and fair society, which is beneficial for everybody. Now on to another question. What are the health implications of gender inequality? Well, gender inequality can lead to significant health disparities. For women, this might mean less access to healthcare services, higher rates of maternal mortality, and the mental health toll of systemic discrimination. Addressing these health disparities is a crucial part of tackling gender inequality. And now for another question. How does gender inequality vary across different cultures? Well, this is an intriguing aspect. Gender inequality manifests differently across cultures due to varying societal norms, religious beliefs, and historical contexts. Of course, it's not my place to say it's worse in this country or in that country or in this religion or that religion, but we need to understand these nuances because understanding these nuances is key to developing effective strategies to combat inequality globally. So don't just take it like you understand gender inequality in your own country, within your own religion and community and societal norms, and try to apply that worldwide. It doesn't work. You have to understand it within each community, within their traditions, their societal norms, etc. And then, of course, there will be solutions that work for everybody. But just don't take a study that you conducted in your own country and try to apply that worldwide. It doesn't work. Trust me. And now let's move to the last question in our frequently asked questions segment. People ask, what is the future of gender equality movements? Well, the future is increasingly digital and interconnected. With the rise of social media and digital platforms, movements for gender equality have found new ways to mobilize, educate, and advocate. The continuous evolution of these movements suggests a dynamic future where change is possible through collective action. With these questions addressed, we hope you've gained a deeper understanding of the complexities surrounding gender inequality and women's rights. But don't go just yet. Up next in our Mythbuster segment, we'll tackle some common misconceptions and myths about this topic and debunk them. Stay with us as we separate fact from fiction in the pursuit of truth. Welcome to the Mythbuster segment of our English Plus podcast, where we're all about separating fact from fiction. When it comes to gender inequality and women's rights, there are numerous myths that cloud the real issues. Let's dive in and debunk some of these common misconceptions. Firstly, there's the widespread belief that gender inequality is solely a women's issue. Well, this couldn't be further from the truth. Gender inequality affects everyone, regardless of gender. It limits the potential of societies as a whole, not just women. Men, too, are boxed into societal norms and expectations, which can be equally harmful. Another common myth is the idea that gender equality has already been achieved in many parts of the world, especially in developed countries. However, the reality is that no country has fully achieved gender equality. Issues like the gender pay gap, underrepresentation in leadership roles, and societal norms about gender roles are still universal challenges. With varying degrees, I have to admit, of course, but they're still universal challenges. There's also a misconception that gender inequality is natural because of biological differences between men and women. Well, while biological differences do exist, gender inequality is a social construct. It arises from learned behaviors and societal norms, not from biological imperatives. You have to think about it this way. We created this. Now, of course, we complement each other biologically, and that's very important. No one is more important. Even biologically, we cannot say that men are better or women are better. We complete each other, and that's essential. We can't do anything on our own. We complement each other. We need each other. The biological differences are actually the strongest weapon we have. But that doesn't mean that this leads to gender inequality. Absolutely not. Biological differences is not the reason behind gender inequality. It's us. It's the social norms, the societal norms that we created. So, for people who are still hiding behind that, please, this is a common myth. Don't even think about it. And let's move on now to another one. Some argue that focusing on women's rights means disadvantaging men. Well, this is a zero-sum game fallacy. In reality, gender equality is beneficial for everyone, as we talked earlier. It's about creating equal opportunities and rights, not taking them away from one gender to give to another. We're just balancing out the equation, which is good for everyone. We're not taking anything from anybody. Remember that. Now let's move on to another one. A common belief is that empowering women threatens traditional family values. Well, in truth, empowering women supports families by ensuring all members have the opportunity to contribute to and benefit from a healthier, more equitable family dynamic. And there's a notion that gender inequality is only a serious issue in developing countries. Well, I just talked about that earlier in a different way, but again, because this is a common myth, we need to debunk it maybe a couple of times to get it right. This is a misleading oversimplification. While the challenges may vary in nature and degree, gender inequality is still a global issue. Make no mistake about that. It is a global issue. And now for another myth. Some think that smaller, everyday actions don't make a difference in fighting gender inequality. Well, let me tell you folks, every action counts. And don't make that the excuse behind not doing anything, or actually waiting for something big to happen. Well, it can start with you. Whether it's challenging a sexist joke, supporting a female-led business, or advocating for policy changes, these actions accumulate to create societal shifts. And now for another misconception. A misconception exists that women's rights are just about workplace equality. Well, of course it is about that, but it's broader than that. It's not just about that. Women's rights encompass a wide range of issues, including reproductive rights, freedom from violence, and educational opportunities. And lastly, many believe that the fight for gender equality is only the responsibility of activists or those directly affected. Well, in reality, again and again, we have to say that it's a collective responsibility. Everyone has a role to play in creating a more equitable society, regardless of their direct experience with gender inequality. So, these myths, when debunked, provide a clearer understanding of the real issues at hand in gender inequality and women's rights. Now, having cleared up these misconceptions, stay tuned for our next segment, In Real Life, where we'll explore some real-life examples that highlight the impact of these issues and the strides being made toward equality. The journey from theory to practice is where change really begins to take shape. Welcome to the In Real Life segment of our English Plus podcast. After exploring the theoretical aspects of gender inequality and women's rights, it's time to ground our understanding with real-life examples. These stories not only bring to life the concepts we've discussed, but also demonstrate how individuals and communities are making strides towards equality. Let's start with a story from the corporate world. Meet Priya, a talented software engineer working in a tech company in Silicon Valley. Despite her skills and experience, Priya noticed that she was often overlooked for promotions in favor of her male colleagues. Determined to change this, Priya began advocating for herself and her female colleagues. She organized meetings with the HR department to discuss gender bias in promotion practices and pushed for transparent criteria for advancement. Her efforts led to a review of the promotion process, eventually resulting in more women, including herself, being promoted to senior roles. In the realm of education, consider the story of Michael, a high school teacher in a small town in Ohio. Michael realized that the school's curriculum lacked representation of significant women figures in history and literature. He took it upon himself to revise the curriculum, incorporating more content on women's contributions to history and society. His actions not only enriched the curriculum, but also inspired his students, especially girls, to see themselves as active makers of history. Now let's travel to a rural village in Kenya. Here, a woman named Amina leads a local initiative to educate girls. In a community where early marriage is common, Amina's work focuses on persuading parents to keep their daughters in school. She also organizes workshops on women's rights and health. Through her tireless efforts, school enrollment for girls in her village has significantly increased, setting these young women on a path to a better future. In the political arena, there's the story of Carlos, a city council member in Mexico City. He championed a groundbreaking policy to provide paid paternity leave, breaking the stereotype that child rearing is solely a woman's responsibility. This policy not only supports gender equality in the workplace, but also promotes a more balanced family life. From the world of media, let's talk about Sarah, a journalist in New York. Sarah focuses on stories about women in male-dominated fields like construction and technology. Her articles not only highlight the achievements of these women, but also address the challenges they face, bringing greater awareness and inspiring more women to break gender barriers in their careers. And in the realm of grassroots activism, meet Yuki, who started a social media campaign in Tokyo to raise awareness about workplace harassment. Her campaign, which started with sharing her own experience, quickly grew, with many women sharing their stories. This led to a broader discussion about workplace safety and women's rights in Japan, encouraging companies to reevaluate their policies. Now, these stories, from Priya's advocacy in the corporate world to Amina's educational efforts in Kenya, Michael's curriculum changes in Ohio, Carlos's policy work in Mexico City, Sarah's journalistic endeavors in New York, and Yuki's activism in Tokyo, are just a few examples of how individuals are making a difference in the fight for gender equality and women's rights. They serve as a reminder that change is possible and that it often starts with the actions of one person. And that, my friends, brings us to the close of today's episode on English Plus Podcast. We've journeyed through the multifaceted world of gender inequality and women's rights, uncovering the complexities, challenges, and most importantly, the pathways to change. Each story, each fact, each myth debunked leads us to a singular realization: the power of action. As we part ways today, I urge you not just to be a listener, but a doer. Look around in your communities, your workplaces, your circles. Where can you make a difference? How can you contribute to breaking down the barriers of gender inequality? Remember, no action is too small, and every step you take is a step towards a more equitable world. And speaking of taking action, there's a way you can support us here at English Plus Podcast. By following and sharing our podcast with your family and friends, you're not just spreading knowledge, you're building a community of informed, conscious individuals who can make a difference. For those who want to delve deeper, we have a special invitation. Join us on Patreon as a patron. Your support not only sustains this podcast, but also unlocks access to all our premium episodes. These episodes dive deeper into topics, offering more insights, more stories, and more learning opportunities. To each of you listening, thank you. Your time, your curiosity, and your eagerness to learn and grow are what make English Plus Podcast a thriving space for learning and discussion. So remember to follow, share, and consider supporting us on Patreon. And don't forget to take the link you can find in the show notes to go to our website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com, and continue the journey by taking a quiz to test your understanding of what we talked about today, or of course, join in the discussions that we created specifically for this episode. As we conclude, take a moment to reflect on what you've learned today. How will you use this knowledge? And how will you be part of the change? Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep taking action. This is Danny signing off from English Plus Podcast. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next episode.